Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, GORDO Games. Welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFC Vegas 71, we have ourselves a clash of titans at heavyweight with Sergey Pavlovich taking on Curtis Blaydes inside the UFC Apex, and it what it bound to be an electrifying night of fights. We now are down to 12 fights on the card with the loss of Ricky Simon, which is moving to the main card next week. Super fun fight there. You know what? I'm kind of excited to see it in a 5-rounder, but we're down to 12 here, but we still have 12 fights to talk about nonetheless. Quickly before we do so, last week went pretty well. Betting, we went up a few, had a couple good reads there, a couple bad reads as well with Dustin Jacoby. And then DraftKings, well, it was looking great. We hit some great plays there until Billy Quarantillo got knocked out. And you know what? Sometimes that happens, right? Like, I told myself I didn't want to bet on Quarantillo and play him on DraftKings to have all my eggs in one basket. And you know what? I'm happy I didn't, because he did cost me a bit of cash on DraftKings, but that's okay. We're moving past that. Quickly, before we dive into this 12-fight slate, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Let's do this. First fight of the night at 135, we have Dana Batgerel versus Blaydes Hiestand making his return to the cage after losing to someone in Ricky Turcios. This is a very fun fight, but a polarizing one here for me because it's pretty simple. I think Batgerel absolutely dismantles Blaydes Hiestand in the striking, and that's not even close. Blaydes Hiestand is someone who could be hit by a lot of things. His striking is still very green, and he was dropped by the likes of someone like Ricky Turcios and a few other times in the regional scene, all guys of which who have nowhere near the amount of power that Dana has. Batgerel has insane power. That's his best attribute, and although he isn't always able to win minutes, that power he has can truly alter the course of a fight. So I think that as long as this fight is on the feet, it's going to be Dana's fight, and he could look upwards of -200 easily. The problem is, Hiestand's not a striker. He's a grappler. He's going to want to go in there and test the ground game of Dana, look to really put him on his ass and try to inflict some ground pound from top position, and the question is, can he do so? See, Dana's only been taken down by one guy in the UFC, in Alatang Haley, but this is really the first time he's facing a proactive grappler like someone in Blaydes Hiestand. Hiestand's going to be relentless. He's shown to have good cardio. He's working with a good camp as well, and I think he's going to go out there and constantly look to drag Dana down to the ground. So really it comes down to who's able to utilize their game plan more. Is it going to be Dana getting off on those power shots, really trying to take advantage of the horrible striking defense of someone like Blaydes Hiestand? Or is it Blaydes Hiestand really just using consistent grappling, never letting Dana go, and trying to score well in that regard? Either way, it's a very volatile matchup. I think gun to the head, the guy who's more proven and who has more, who have more confidence in it is going to be someone like Batgerel, like someone who has fought in the UFC before, has exemplified his amazing power, and has his X factor in the matchup. But we're looking at this from a DraftKings perspective. I love my grapplers. And if Blaydes Hiestand is going to go out there, he's going to train with people like Marab, and he's going to have that really good cardio, his DraftKings ceiling could replicate that. Because I don't think he's necessarily the best control grappler, and I don't think he's necessarily someone who's going to go out there and dominate Batgerel in the grappling, but he's going to go out there and pose a constant takedown threat, which could score well on DraftKings. Either way, it's the first fight of the night. You guys know how I feel about that one. Usually it scores pretty well. So in this case, I think that when it comes to gun to my head, who's my favorite betting option? Well, it's probably Batgerel done out by KO, because we have seen Blaydes Hiestand knocked out before. But DraftKings, I do think that Blaydes Hiestand has the higher ceiling, especially at this underdog price tag. So at 7.5K, he's able to exemplify that grappling and constant pressure. Could score well, however, he's going to have to avoid the power of Batgerel. Next fight up, we have the 15-4 Korean Silva versus the 12-4 Priscilla Cachoeira. Cachoeira coming back, and she always has these fun fights in the UFC. Either she's going out there, she's sparking Ariane Lipski, or she's trying to gouge the eyes out of Jillian Robertson. Either way, she'll do whatever it takes to win. The problem is she isn't necessarily the best fighter. She's not very technically sound. She's a horrible ground game, but she's the zombie girl. She walks forward, good pressure, good durability, and some good power on the feet. Korean Silva's a killer, 15-4. All her 15 of her wins are by finish. She had a 100% finish rate, and she showed a very diverse arsenal. She has some good power on the feet and a very good submission game as well. The problem with her is she's kind of seemed to fade. We haven't really seen her out of that first round, second round too often, but she does have that questionable cardio, and I don't have any doubt in my mind that if she's not able to get Cachoeira out of there, Cachoeira is going to keep walking forward. What Silva does have, though, is the X factor in this spot here, because if she's able to take down someone, Priscilla Cachoeira, that's usually a pretty good win. I mean, people have been able to dominate Cachoeira on the ground. I think that Silva has the blueprint to get this done pretty easily. So when it comes to picking a side here, I do think Korean Silva is the rightful favorite. She has power on the feet too. She has competent striking in the feet to put up with Cachoeira, and she has the X factor, being able to take down Cachoeira and use her pretty good BJJ. But is she someone who I want to trust at this price tag when we have seen her cardio fall off the cliff? When I know that Cachoeira is going to be still in that fight in that third round? Not necessarily, but for that same reason, I don't necessarily think that Cachoeira is the best underdog in the world either. Because in my mind, if you're betting on Cachoeira, you're more so betting against Silva's gas tank and betting on Silva's fight IQ, really. I think Silva has the higher ceiling on DraftKings. I think she has more paths of victory in the spot. And I do think she wins more often than not. In doing so, a sneaky 9.1K option due to that grappling upside. However, not one who I have the most confident in this fight. Francis Fire Marshal times 7-0 facing the Frenchman William Gomis 11-2. And I'm pretty big on Francis Fire Marshal this week. Let me just put it that way. He's my first bet of the week. Locked him up -175. And I do think he should be favored in this spot here. He is someone who has very, very much impressed me. He's getting a guy who I see holes in his game. And William Gomis is someone who goes out there who usually likes to initiate the grappling. And he used that grappling and top control to really win his fight last time. The problem is, I think that everything that William Gomis does, I think Francis Marshal does it better. I think on the feet, although Gomis does have that reach advantage, he doesn't use it that well. I have no doubt in my mind that Francis Marshal is a better boxer. He exemplified that. He seemed to be a very durable guy with some very, very good hands on the feet. And if it's going to be Gomis wanting to initiate the wrestling, not only do I think Marshall's going to have the opportunity to reverse him, but I do think Marshall has the better jiu-jitsu. In his own right, I do think Marshall has the opportunity to put Gomis on his back foot and even take him down at will in this spot here too. We've seen Gomis taken down in the regional scene. We've seen his BJJ being kind of a weak point. And although he has worked on it, he was somebody who was taken down. He was somebody who was controlled, and he's somebody who was outstruck. He's someone with holes in his game. Now, is there a world where Gomis is able to shoot takedown right away, put Marshall on his back, and make this a close decision? 100%. Francis Marshall is no lock. But when we're playing percentages, and I'm thinking of a fighter who wins a large majority of the time, it is Francis Marshall. I do think he wins the striking exchanges a large majority of the time. I do think he has the strength, the wrestling, and the grappling to put up with that takedown threat of Gomis. And I do think that the fighter getting his hand raised at the end, more often than not, is Francis Marshall. Now, at 9.2K, he is a very, very viable option, but I'm not forcing him into these lineups. Not only do I have a bet on him, and I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket, but there are a lot of very, very viable options. However, when I'm talking about picking a fighter on DraftKings from either side, I do kind of want this to target this fight because Marshall does have that constant aggression. He's very, very fast. He always going forward. He put on an absolute beating in his Dana White Contender Series fight. He's shown good cardio, good pressure, good pace. And I do think he has the opportunity to score very, very well. Flip side of things, Gomis does have some upside if he's able to get that grappling game off. I just don't think he wins at a very high clip, and for that reason, not someone I'm looking to roster too much. Instead, give me Marshall on the money line, Marshall on DraftKings. I think the Fire Marshal is able to get it done this weekend. Next up, 8-2 Muhammad Usman versus the 4-0 Junior Tafa. This is an interesting fight, a battle of the brothers. You have Muhammad Usman, who's the lesser brother, and Junior Tafa, who we'll see how he's doing because he's still 4-0. He's still someone who haven't really seen all these options from him. He's still pretty new to the UFC. Well, it is his first UFC fight. Sorry, he's new to MMA. What I do see from Junior Tafa is not only a guy who's still green, but someone who has shown some pretty fast hands, some pretty good combinations, but he's a primary striker. What I'm seeing from Usman is someone who is a bit of everything. He mixes it up. He has the opportunity to wrestle some fights, but he doesn't wrestle in the others. He's just a weird fighter because sure, he has power. He showed that last time against Pauga, but he also has low minute winning ability or not always the best fight IQ. He seems to be set in his ways of either a striker or a grappler, depending on the matchup. And in this case here, when I'm watching Junior Tafa and I'm saying, okay, when I'm looking at their skill sets, who's going to be winning the striking exchange? Well, it's going to be Junior Tafa. Not only do I think he has more power, but I think he has more minute winning equity early on, but we haven't seen him extended too much. We haven't seen him put on his back. So although I think skill for skill, Junior Tafa is the better fighter, I think that the fighter with a more diverse arsenal is someone like Muhammad Usman, someone who could throw in some grappling, someone who could potentially have the cardio to go in that third round, which makes this a very, very intriguing matchup. Now, being at 8K and 8.2K on DraftKings, this is a range where you might go to a bit more often because it's a close fight. And sure, the opener had Tafa pretty high, but money's come in, it is a literal coin flip. Gun to my head, I'm picking Junior Tafa because I think he is the skill for skill better fighter. But would I be surprised if Usman's able to utilize his diverse skill set to go out there and either grapple or out-survive Tafa in later rounds? No, not at all. But to me, it's a sloppy one. To me, it's two fighters who I don't project to have the highest ceilings in the UFC. So not necessarily people I'm running the roster. It could be a sloppy heavyweight fight. I do think Tafa does have round one potential. For that reason, I will have some ownership of him, but not necessarily my favorite fight on the card. Give me Tafa, but it is a very, very close one. Speaking of close fights, 16-4 Rosa versus the 8-2 Norma Dumont. This is another interesting one that is also a coin flip with Rosa going up a weight class to face Norma Dumont, and it's pretty simple in my opinion. In the striking, Dumont is going to be the moment winner. She does throw with heat, she does have some decent power, but minute winner is going to be Cachoeira Rosa. She does have volume. She has the opportunity to be pretty tricky in the striking exchanges and do pretty well for herself. So if that kind of is 50-50, who's going to get off in the wrestling more? Both of these girls have been taken down, they have been controlled, but they also have a decent offensive game in their own right. And I think that although we do have a couple coin flip fights on the card, this is the biggest coin flip. And this is the one where I'm kind of scratching my head wondering what side do I take. Because trust me, I don't really want a bet on this fight, especially considering it's going to the scorecards and we could get another Jocelyn Edwards decision. So then we're stuck on DraftKings and I'm looking to pick a side. Well, it's going to be Cachoeira Rosa. Because when Dumont wins, she's putting up 92, 73, 68. and sure, the 102 against Evan Smith, but it's going to be Rosa who puts up better volume, better DraftKings scores. I mean, in her first 3 wins, she scored 111, 109, 108, and then she scored 89 and 105. The girl has the ability to score well and have a very high pace to put up decent DraftKings scores. So again, I'm going to say this for a third time, this is a coin flip fight. It is 50-50. But I'm going to go with the person with more upside on DraftKings, which is Rosa. I think she's able to utilize her volume, potentially sprinkle in some takedowns into a very, very close decision win. Well, we went from back-to-back close fights. Let's go to one that's a bit wider here. We have the 12-2 Montel Jackson versus the 28-10-1 Ronnie Yayha. And Montel Jackson is the biggest favorite on the card. He is also sitting at 9.7K on DraftKings. He is a hefty favorite, and for a pretty good reason, in my opinion. He has been a knockdown king. In 9 fights, he has 11 knockdowns. I mean, this guy is a very, very powerful striker. He's going to have, an 8.5-inch reach advantage here in this spot here. He's a very lanky striker who utilizes his range well, but also has some good power at the end of his punches. And sure, Ronnie Yayha has a very extensive UFC career, dating all the way back to 2007. He's fought some great opponents in the UFC, but he's kind of getting to that end of his UFC career where he was dropped by Kunal Kang. He was dropped twice by Ricky Simone, and he is someone who is hard to trust at this point of his career because sure, we know he has that insane ground game, that great jiu-jitsu that is able to get a lot of people out of there, but every moment this fight's on the feet, he's going to be at a big disadvantage. I mean, he only has a 38% striking accuracy, and he only averages 1.58 strikes per minute. I mean, he's not a striker, he's a grappler. Although he's getting older, he's going to be facing a guy who's going to be a lot bigger, a lot larger, a lot younger, with only a 33% takedown accuracy against someone with a 67% takedown defense. If your only path to victory is grappling, it's going to be hard for me to pick you here. So sure, there's always an opportunity for Ronnie Yayha to go out there and find a Hail Mary submission against Montel Jackson. That's why I'll have a tiny bit of dart throw ownership on him at 6.5. But a large majority of the time, it's going to be Montel Jackson winning a lot of the striking exchanges, fending off the takedowns, and beating this guy who's at the latter end of his career. So I think the favorite price tag is justified. I think Montel Jackson wins this fight a lot of the time. And I think he's able to get someone like Ronnie Yayha out of there. This is a fight where I'm on the under because the path to victory for Yayha is a Hail Mary submission. And more times than not, Montel Jackson's able to find a knockdown and find a finish here. Give me the under and give me an under win for Montel Jackson here, probably winning by knockout. On DraftKings, he does have this really high salary. Honestly, it might help you get to him because of how this might scare people away. I mean, 9.7 is kind of egregious, but you're sacrificing a lot of salary to get someone who should win a lot of the time and who should put up knockdown points in the process as well. So if you're willing to pay up there, get that salary, Montel Jackson's the type of guy who should win you a fight, who should get you a lot of points. But overall, this is a fight I'm looking to target if you do have the salary remaining. Next up, 22-6-2, Ricky Glenn, 19-10, Christos Giagos, and we haven't seen Glenn in a while. A fighter who's been in and out, had his injuries, had a fun third round against Dawson, but let's not forget he was controlled in the first 2. He was dominated there. So for someone who's only fought twice in the past 5 years, it's really interesting seeing him at such a high salary or such a high price tag on the betting market here when he's getting a guy who's been active in Christian Giagos, but who's been facing the much better level of competition. I mean, he's willing to fight everybody, and that's why I commend someone like Christian Giagos, a guy who fought Thiago Moises, a guy who fought Arman Suzuki, and who fought the GOAT, Carlton Minus. I mean, he has fought all of these great fighters in this division, and when he gets that step up in competition, sure, he's losing, but it's only making him better in my opinion. So sure, it's a tall task, the guy in Ricky Glenn who has good get-up games, some very good fundamental striking, and who's overall a tough dude to get out of there. But when you're putting a guy in Christian Giagos, a guy is a primary grappler, at 7.2K, against a guy who's only fought twice in the past 5 years, a guy who's had his injuries, I'm going to take a shot in the underdog here. And I am going to pick Christian Giagos just because I do think he's able to use some consistent grappling to win the first couple rounds, put a good pace on someone like Glenn who's been out of the octagon for a while, maybe has some ring rust. The real tricky part for me is that cardio, because Giagos has seemed to fade down the stretch. I think he's able to bank the first 2, and Glenn's not necessarily someone, well, I say this, but he does have a knockout win his last 2 fights, but not someone who's usually going to go out there and find the lights out knockout button. So give me the dog shot on Giagos. I think he's hungrier here. I think he's more ready for it, been in the cage more, and has a good path to victory with his consistent grappling. I think it's a much closer fight than the line entails, but I'm going to take the dog here. And I think he's a viable DraftKings underdog because if he does win this fight, it's going to come with constant takedowns. He's going to come with good pressure, and it should score decent at his price tag of 7.2K. Third 50-50 fight of the night, you have Jeremiah Wells, 11-2-1 versus Matt Semelsberger, 11-4. Matt Semelsberger, a beauty, was happy enough to do a show with him a while back. Met him, talked to him for a while. Very, very nice guy. But I do think it's a tall task. I mean, a lot of money's coming on Matt Semelsberger, and I get it. He does have good volume, good cardio. He's an overall just a good guy with good meat and potatoes, foundation, basics. A guy who's able to stay in the fight and really be competent wherever the fight goes. Whereas Jeremiah Wells is just a ball of energy. He is super, super explosive. 3 fights in the UFC, 3 finishes, fights out of a very good camp. Renzo Gracie Philly, there were some good guys. And he just a guy who we've only seen good things from. So when I'm looking here, especially from the DraftKings side of things, I think who has more upside is Jeremiah Wells. He has a great takedown game. We saw Semelsberger taken down and controlled by Fletcher early on, but he also has this insane power. Sure, Semelsberger is a tough dude, but looking at his opponents, right, like Carlton Minus, Jason Witch, Chaos, okay, sure, but Sano, Morono, Matthews, like these are all people who don't have the same power that Jeremiah Wells does, especially early on. So when we're going category by category, Matt Semelsberger, sure, he'll have the better cardio. I think he has the better volume and probably the more durable fighter. But the guy with more upside, the guy with more explosive power, more knockout power, more takedown upside, control time upside, submission upside, and optics upside is going to be Jeremiah Wells. So in a 50-50 fight, I'm taking this guy here in Jeremiah Wells who has the higher ceiling. On DraftKings, when I'm picking out of the two of them, it's going to be Wells a lot of the time. 8.4, 3 wins, 96, 110, 102. And that's including a knockout win over someone with a tough chin like Court McGee. So I think that early on, the much larger threat is Wells. And if you're betting on Semelsberger, you're kind of hoping that Wells fades a bit because early on, he's going to be a whole lot to handle. And I do think he's able to score well in a win. His win condition, it has a very high ceiling attached to it. So give me Jeremiah Wells. I think it's a very, very close fight. I think he's able to use that explosive energy he has and get a finish early on. But if he doesn't, it'll be a bit dicey. Continuing on to the main card, 7-3 Brogan Walker, 13-5 Yasmin Luncindo. Shorter breakdown on Luncindo here. Brogan Walker, I backed her against Juliana Miller. Bad bet, horrible bet. But she's someone who I think has holes in her game. I think she's got the good meat and potatoes, but she struggles when she's pushed a pace in anywhere, when she doesn't have time to react, when she's being pressured, overwhelmed, or even grappled at all. And Lucindo's someone who went in there and who had a great first performance and a loss. I mean, she's such a big favorite in her second fight after a loss because she impressed so much. She showed improved striking. She held her own in the boxing exchanges, and she put up a very, very good fight of the should have been fight of the night. A fight of the night worthy performance her last time out. And now she's getting someone in Brogan Walker who doesn't like that style, who doesn't like to be pushed forward. But what we're not understanding about Lucindo is she was a primary grappler on the regional scene. She was someone who liked to take people down, decent ground and pound, and Brogan Walker was just finished by ground and pound. So give me Yasmin Lucindo to go out there, win the striking exchanges, overwhelm Brogan Walker, mix in some takedowns, and probably even get her out of there, but I'll probably say a decision, a dominant one at that though. At 9.5, she's just so hard to trust. Because I don't think she has the same finish upside as someone like Francis Marshall, Karine Silva, or Montel Jackson. So I think Lucindo's a phenomenal cash play because I think she wins this fight a lot of the time. But in GPP, I think there's better options. Almost no Brogan Walker because I think her path to victory is point striking here. And although it's not impossible, it's not very likely either. So this is more of a cash fight for me. I think they're better tournament options. Next up, 29-14-1 Bobby Green versus the 19-6 Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon coming off a win against Patty. Oh no, he didn't win. And now facing a striker. Bobby Green is a showman. A guy will fight anybody. I mean, Makachev, Dober, Hasbro, Fiziev, Moises. Like, he'll fight anybody. And he's coming off a knockout loss to Drew Dober, which can't be great. But I don't think that Gordon possesses the same threat on the feet that Dober does, that same power. So when it coming down to these striking exchanges, and although Gordon was able to win the striking exchange against someone in Paddy Pimblett, there's going to be a step up in competition in terms of the striking, in my opinion. So Bobby Green's going to have the advantages there. He's going to have the ability to throw more volume, be technically sound, and fend off those takedown attempts that Gordon will possess. I think that overall, Green's the rightful favorite because he's going to be winning a lot of these exchanges and he's going to be winning a decision at a high clip due to those striking exchanges and due to the optics that he possesses. But how often does he finish Jared Gordon at 9.4? Probably not very often. So again, he's just like Lucindo. He's not a good GBP option. He's more of a cash tournament play because I do think he wins at a decently high clip. I just don't think he scores very well in the process. Flip side of things, if Gordon wins this fight, it's probably with some pretty good grappling, takedowns, and offensive pressure. I think he's also a good dart throw, considering the people around him. But this isn't a fight that's high up on my list. I think it's going to be a fun striking exchange because Bobby Green's going to showboat, he's going to do his thing, and that's always fun to watch. But this isn't necessarily a fight I want to have too much financial involvement in. I'm just going to sit back and watch from a fan perspective, but I do think Bobby Green gets it done. Co-main event time, 19-7 Brad Tavares, 22-8 Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva coming off a loss to GM3, didn't look too good, and it looked horrible, actually. And you get everyone kind of questioning where Bruno Silva's at. Because sure, he's got 3 wins in the UFC, including 3 wins by knockout, but Jordan Wright, meh. Sanchez and Turman, both chinny guys. And when you got those step up in competition, again, Pereira is a much larger step up than Mearshart is, he lost. And the funniest part about it is, he got knocked out by Mearshart, pretty much. I know he got club and sub, but he got knocked out there, but not against Pereira. Hilarious. Point being, we don't know what kind of stage Bruno Silva's at and fights by knockout. And sure, Brad Tavares has been knocked out before, but against these guys who are very technically sound and who are able to find that off switch of Brad Tavares, because aside from that one punch knockout power, Tavares is pretty durable and he has a good point style ability. Good in the clinch, good kicks from the outside, someone who's able to win these fights optically, and I think he will have more minute winning potential than Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva's path to victory, in my opinion, is the knockout power, and I'm not saying he can't do it, I'm just saying it's not very likely, in my opinion. When I'm picturing how this fight's going, a large majority of the time, it's Brad Tavares getting his hand raised at the end. Maybe we need to see more from Bruno Silva, maybe we need to see him tested a bit more, but in my eyes, give me Tavares to win this fight. But again, Tavares isn't the best DraftKings scorer. I mean, 8.9K when he wins, he's throwing up 74, 55, 81, 72, 53, 54. Pass on that. I'd much rather have Blaydes, Silva, Marshall, Batgerel. This isn't a very appealing option for Tavares on DraftKings. Instead, I'd much rather have Silva, whose path to victory is probably that knockout. A very binary fight, but I do think most likely it is Tavares getting his hand raised by decision at the end. I just need to see more from Silva before trusting him again. And finally, we are to this main event, a very, very fun one. It kind of caps off the card perfectly at 17-1 Sergey Pavlovich versus the 17-3 Curtis Blaydes. It's just so fun. This is extremely hard to pick a side because I do think it is a coin flip. And I've said that for 3 fights already. You're thinking, Gordo, what are you talking about? Well, it's pretty simple. Does Pavlovich have the ability to knock out Blaydes early on? And does Pavlovich have any wrestling? Because on the feet, sure, Blaydes are showing improved boxing. Pavlovich is a different beast. He swarms when he sees any blood at all. He has great finishing potential. He has insane power. And I think he's a very, very good technical boxer as well. He's also just very, very physically imposing. Now, the big red flag, though, is can he fend off the takedowns from Curtis Blaydes? Because that's what Curtis Blaydes is. He's a phenomenal wrestler, one that poses a threat for a lot of this division. Because we've seen Sergey Pavlovich taken down and finish like Overeem did in his first fight. And although that was in 2018, that's what Curtis Blaydes is going to go out there and do. There are so many variables in this fight because every single fight Sergey Pavlovich has fought has gone under 1.5 rounds. It hasn't even left the first round. But if you were to ask me who has the ability to find the off switch, more likely it's Sergey Pavlovich. Because when Curtis Blaydes is losing these fights, he's being knocked out. Knocked out early by Nagano. Locked out early by Lewis. Well, second round early. His chin isn't perfect. Sure, he's decently durable, but if Pavlovich connects on the feet, it could be early on and it could end very poorly. So I'll be straight up with you. I bet on Sergey Pavlovich because on one book he was plus 160, and another book he was plus 130, so I took the plus 160. Am I going to hedge out? Maybe, because this fight there are so many variables. Can Pavlovich stuff a takedown? Does Pavlovich have more than 1 round of cardio? Or does Blaydes' chin die early on? So many variables, a very, very polarizing fight. One that I'm so excited to watch because it'll be so fun for as long as it lasts. But I do think it's extremely binary, and there's so many questions left unanswered. And for that reason, I want to know more. I want to learn more about Sergey Pavlovich before backing him in a spot like this with too much confidence. And I think this is the perfect test to do so. DraftKings-wise, you must have this fight. Like, must have it. Because if Pavlovich wins, I mean, he's scored 144, 131, 109, 108, 106. I mean, all first-round finishes, and if he's going to beat Blaydes, it's going to score very, very well. Flip side of things, Blaydes himself is a phenomenal scorer. 116 in his last one, 92, 84, 172 against Volkov, 120 against Abdurakhimov. The guy scores well as well, and I do think this is a fight with minus 750 out of the distance. It's going to end early. So you pick your side. Who do you trust more? Someone who we've seen go long duration, someone who does have the grappling, but also has been knocked out in round 1, or someone who only has round 1 finishes and does potentially have that hole in his ground to give him cardio. Either way, I almost want split ownership on this one. Of course, I might lean towards Pavlovich because of his price tag. Like if we're talking about me liking Pavlovich and Giagos as underdogs, that leaves you with a base salary of 8.85 remaining for your last 4, which allows you to get Montel Jackson, which allows you to get Francis Marshall, and it still allows you to pick some of those guys from the coin flip fights early on. There are so many good ways to build if you're looking to get someone like Pavlovich. Flip side of things, I've mentioned a few underdogs and some dart throws who will allow you to get Blaydes as well. You want this fight. If you're looking for a parlay piece, you take the under. If you're looking for a good DraftKings target, you take this fight. It is a very, very interesting one, but I don't know how much of a financial investment I want from the betting line because it is so close. At what plus 160, I did take Pavlovich, but man, I feel like I've been rambling on for this one for a while. It is a very, very interesting fight. I am super excited to watch it, but I don't know if I have a proper read on it because how can you really get a read on this fight when there are so many intangibles? Gun to my head though, I'm going to pick Sergey Pavlovich, and I'm ready to look stupid doing so. I think there are more unknowns about Pavlovich that could be positive things, right? Like we haven't really seen him defending a double leg before, and what if he's good at it? You know, like there's so many things where we look to see, and I think Pavlovich has the ability to do well there. So that's enough for me talking. Got him ahead picking Pavlovich. Either way, very, very close fight, and it is another 50-50 fight of very many on this card. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Quickly, let me give you my quick picks. Taking Batgerel in the first fight in a very, very close one. Taking Kareem Silva, Francis Marshall, Junior Tafa, Karel Rosa, Montel Jackson, Kristen Giagos, Jeremiah Wells, Yasmin Lucindo, Bobby Green, Brad Tavares, and Sergey Pavlovich in what should be a very, very exciting DraftKings card, but also one from a fan perspective as well. On DraftKings, it's hard to get to, but I do love that Montel Jackson fight. I love the Marshall fight. The main event, of course, is going to be my highest owned fight with Blaydes and Pavlovich. But there are some fighters with good upside as well. I think Giagos has a lot of upside as an underdog. I think Hiestand has a lot of upside as an underdog, even though I'm picking against him here. I think that Rosa and Wells, although they are in 50-50 fights, have more upside than their counterparts as well. In cash, Lucindo, Green, Tavares should all get their hands raised here. Either way, though, this has been a very, very exciting matchup. I have no idea how long I've been talking for, but I am very, very pumped for this card. Should be back with Brett Apple this week to talk about it from a live stream perspective, though. So hopefully get to talk to some of you there. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. A lot of talking. Hopefully my insight has helped you guys build your DraftKings lineup, build your betting, and hopefully make some money this weekend because it is a fun one, and I'm hoping to build off of this winning streak we established last week. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. Please DM me on Twitter at GamblesGordo. Always happy to talk fights, and I look forward to seeing y'all do it again next week. So I hope everyone joins the cards this weekend. Let's make some money, guys.